Let me take you back to winter 2019, about 4 years ago. I had just gotten into the gym a few months prior, and every day I would whip out these light dumbbells and do a few sets of curls and overhead presses. But from when I was a kid, I loved climbing in trees and swinging on the monkey bars. And whenever I would see people on IG or YouTube do these crazy calisthenic feats, I felt super compelled to try that myself. I had this voice inside of me telling me that I could do these things too one day, but I had no idea where to start. Like many others, I had my eyes set on the bar muscle up when I first started out. Several times I would leave my house and go to this calisthenics park not far away in hopes of today getting the muscle up. For several months I tried until one day it suddenly clicked. And fast forward to today, and I've achieved several calisthenic skills, most recently the one-arm pull-up, and from this recent bout of training I realised that I've learned several key lessons for how to train for calisthenic skills in general. Obviously, achieving a skill within calisthenics takes more work than just watching a YouTube video like this one, but I have found that people tend to overcomplicate training, especially calisthenics. In my journey towards the one-arm pull-up, I discovered and applied 5 core principles, and the way I see it, these are cornerstones in any successful calisthenics skills training. Now, the first principle is leave nothing to chance, and what I mean by this is that everything should be measured. So if you're doing an isometric hold, for example, you should have a system for accurately measuring how long you're staying up on the bar in the correct angled isometric hold. It's not even how long are you on the bar and it's sort of a good it's sort of like an isometric hold. No, how long are you on the bar and how many seconds specifically you manage to maintain the exact angle you're looking for in the isometric hold. And then let's say you're doing band assisted reps, how far down on the band are you holding? For this it might be a bit difficult to say specifically that you're holding 2.5 decimeters or whatever it might be down the band. It might be a bit strange, but at least make a discrete, like if you can't make a continuous system, we have specifically you're on the bar for 5.6 seconds or like pretty darn exact numbers and pretty darn exact measurements, then at least make a discrete system where you can say, okay, along the band you are like 2 hands down, 3 hands down, some type of system like that makes it make sense when you look over your notes and you plan ahead from week to week. Because if you don't do this and if you don't measure your things, you won't really know where you are. Sure, you'll get a feel for it, but with weight fluctuations, with strength fluctuations, it will be hard to tell if we're actually improving from week to week. And when pursuing skills in calisthenics, especially elite skills, we need as much data as possible, and we simply need to know if we're on track or not. If we're not on track, we need to take a step back and reevaluate what we can do to our training to ensure that we'll steadily progress. Principle number 2 is managing CNS fatigue. And what do I mean by this? Well, CNS is the central nervous system, and CNS fatigue is what you experience when you have for example, a PR on the deadlift or on the bench. Like, you have a very heavy lift. One thing is that you get tired, your body takes a bit of a hit, right? It takes a few days to recover from a heavy lift, from a PR, that sort of thing. But you'll also experience, if you try the next day to go for a similar lift or even very close to it but not completely there yet, you might not even be able to do something that's a couple of kilos off what you managed to do the day prior. And that is simply your mind limiting the output to even check that you're doing alright, to be like, okay, hold up, this guy really exerted himself hard yesterday, and taking a bit of a step back and even seeing if you can still keep pushing, because it took a bit of a sort of a surprise sit. It's basically your mind checking in on you and being like, okay, we need to halt his strength for a little bit, we need to cap it for a little bit at a lower level and make sure that everything is alright with this dude. So yeah, CNS fatigue is a big thing to take into account, especially with elite calisthenic skills, because at some point doing certain progressions will really tax your nervous system alongside your body, and that can be something that hinders your training, it can be something that plays into your training depending on how you schedule things. Now the third principle is progressive overload. I'm sure we've all heard about this in some shape or another, the guy walking around with a little ball, and as it grows, he also has to adapt and get stronger in order to keep on carrying it. The ox gets heavier and he gets stronger in order to be able to carry it, right? And that is linked to our ability as humans, our great ability to adapt to great changes, right? So like if you're put under stress when you're training, your body adapts to that and responds by becoming stronger, right? It's truly fascinating. However, the entire reason as to why this is happening is because your body is given a reason to become stronger, right? The ox or the bull keeps on growing in size, it keeps on becoming heavier, and so if the body doesn't respond by becoming stronger, you won't be able to pick up the bull anymore. That's simply how it works, right? And this is an important thing to keep in mind in pretty much all training. You need to progressively overload. You need to make sure you make things more and more difficult, either by changing for certain calisthenic skills their lever points, right? Making sure that things are more difficult so that you send the signals to your body that it needs to become stronger. That's how strength training works. Now, this isn't something I learned during the one-arm pull-up journey, but during this training journey, I relearned the importance of making sure you're consistently pushing yourself. And not just that things are, you're pushing yourself hard, but to specifically be able to see in your training notes and in your training planner that your lifts are getting heavier, you're able to stay on the bar for a longer period of time, that all of these things are slowly rising. Sure, you'll have fluctuations, but overall the trend should be that it goes up. If you notice that things are stagnating, it's a good cue to then realize that, okay, either I've reached a plateau or I'm not measuring my training in a proper enough manner to be able to see that things are pretty stable, and I should either take measures to change how I'm approaching the exercises, change up the exercises, or do some type of change to my training to make sure that my body is responding to the training by becoming stronger rather than sort of staying at a similar level. And this, coming back to principle number 1, is why it's so important to measure everything. Because if you don't have data on this, if you don't have things you can look over and see that, okay, the general trend is going up, then you won't necessarily know that you're not progressively overloading, and you'll be sat there wondering why you're not improving, why you're not unlocking certain skills, when you're not challenging your body any further, right? You need to send your body the signals that, hey, you need to keep on pushing, like this is what you have of strength now is not adequate for what you need in order to do the desired skill, and that's how you will progress. Obviously though, it's important to note that there is a balance here, right? You can't just hop on the bar and give your body sort of cues of like the most strenuous exercise you've ever seen, because to a certain limit it can't handle everything either, right? It needs to be done progressively, hence progressive overload. And one thing that's really important to keep in mind here regarding principle number 2 and principle number 3 is that balancing CNS fatigue, like being able to manage CNS fatigue at the same time as progressively overloading, becomes quite difficult. And often the more difficult the skill, the more difficult it is to find a good balance between how much you should train and how much you should rest in order to ensure you're not burning out, either like physically, like overtraining, or your central nervous system is too fatigued to be able to allow you to perform and to train adequately, and to make sure you're actually giving yourself enough of a challenge, enough resistance, enough load to be able to actually stimulate growth. Now, principle number 4 is a bit of a mindset, and it's really well described by this quote, and that is that the best is the enemy of the good. It can also be thought of as perfectionism is the enemy of progress. And here the entire idea is that you don't want to be discouraged by slow results or times of imperfect results. Over the years, I've learned that although we might all strive for perfect technique using raw strength, and well, good technique and raw strength, it might sound like a bit of a mismatch, but having clear technique and being able to have the raw strength necessary to pull it off, to not be like having some weird body alignments in terms of in the technique department and for the strength, that you're not cheating it by doing any kipping or any sort of weird explosive movement, but that you're able to fully express raw strength through the proper technique. That's usually people's goal when they try to get into these calisthenic skills, not just being able to do it, but to do it well and to have it look nice and proper, and to express a higher level, I suppose, of body control and body mastery. But often it tends to be the case that people try to reach a particular skill, they work on it for quite some time, and then they might not look the way they want to, or they realise that, okay, I have to do a bit of a kip or this type of thing, and they get dissuaded and they stop the training. And that is the biggest mistake you could make. I mean, in the journey to any skill, it won't always be a smooth ride. There will be times where you think that this absolutely looks like shit, or like performance should be better. There are ups and downs in any training. But give it time and stay consistent. Remember that it's a marathon and not a sprint, and mastery comes with time. So whether that means building from a kipping muscle up, or from a one-arm pull-up, or your body alignment is sort of all over the place, don't stress it. Simply keep on working on it and it will come with time. Of course, the goal is proper technique, but even if you can't do the most optimal of technique, even after a couple of months or however long it might be, this shouldn't dissuade you from continuing the journey. If anything, it should be a cue for you to step back, take a look at your training, take a look at your technique and your form, and evaluate. Maybe you've rushed some of the basics and it would be wise to go back and spend some extra time reviewing some of the earlier progressions in terms of the exercises you've used to build up, or perhaps you're neglecting some more basic feature of your training, whether that be in the actual training itself, when it comes to overall training volume, when it comes to how you're progressively overloading, managing CNS fatigue, or these things we've mentioned earlier, or it's simply something like not enough rest and recovery, right? Not enough sleep, and not good enough of a diet, or like just diet all over the place being kind of terrible, right? So usually there's quite a simple solution, but it takes a bit of evaluation, taking a bit of a step back and looking at where you're currently at. You'll find something quite quickly, which is like, okay, this stands a bit out, this deserves a bit more attention, and once you sort that, things tend to sort themselves out quite nicely. Now, the fifth and final principle is to keep things simple. As I said in the start of the video, people tend to overcomplicate training. Find some exercises that you like and that work for you and stick to those. Don't jump around between 13 different exercises, trying out 7 different training systems to see if there is some ultimate God-given combo that suddenly drops into your lap. At the end of the day, it comes down to consistently showing up and executing the plan. It's natural to experience strength and performance fluctuations. It's natural to also experience feelings of demotivation and just discouragement, but stick to it and you'll see that if you keep the principles from this video in mind, there is no skill that is outside the realm of possibility. Thanks for watching the video. Now, if you guys want to train for the one-arm pull-up yourselves, consider watching the video that pops up on the screen right now. It's about how to train for the strength element of the one-arm pull-up. But without further ado, thanks for watching, and as always, remember to keep on training, train what you love, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers, guys.